How powerful is the Smallville Superman? Tom Welling is often forgot because he never really wore the suit, but believe it or not, he is pretty powerful. If you want to know more on that, at the end of this video, I have a video I did on the strongest live-action Superman. Check it out, Rian. That's the end screen.
I don't know if a lot of you guys realize this, but superhero fans today have it pretty good. I mean, there's a wide variety of different movies, TV shows, and video games to pick from, all featuring a wide variety of brand new or rarely seen characters. Studios are constantly fighting each other to try to push out bigger and better superhero adaptations, and it wasn't exactly that long ago when every studio out there was trying to set up their own cinematic universes.
I need you younger guys to realize this. You don't know how good you have it. There was a time when superhero movies were few and far between, and the only ones that were really out there were, DC, and there weren't that many of them, and TV shows, there wasn't that many. I mean, you guys have no idea. Superheroes have turned into what Westerns used to be. My grandfathers and, my wife's grandfather, before they died, they just kept the TV on and watched Westerns all the time. That's going to be us with superheroes in the nursing home, guys. We're just going to be putting on in the nursing home the superhero channel, In
an attempt to copy what Marvel popularized. Of course, almost none of them turned out to be any good or even got past the first movie, but whatever. It's the thought that counts.
Hey, Andrew Garfield had 2 movies, and those were pretty good.
Seriously,
Not the best.
So it wasn't always like this. Back in the good old days, comics weren't really taken as seriously as they are now, and fans, especially the ones looking for something on TV, usually just had to take whatever they could get, no matter how ridiculous the final product was.
Yeah. That's right, Peter. I'm you, and you're me, and this is a gun.
But in 2001, the CW showed everybody that it was possible to do a decent take on a comic book with a little show known as Smallville. Sure, it had its cheesy moments.
Yes.
I mean, it's a show from the early 2000s.
Smallville was the start of it all, guys. You don't even realize.
What'd you expect?
Not say there wasn't superhero shows before like Lois and Clark or something, but it started a movement.
But on the whole, getting to see Tom Welling's Clark Kent grow from an insecure young man to a powerful superhero was awesome. Speaking of powerful, this dude was easily one of the most powerful live-action depictions of the Man of Steel. I mean, we saw this guy casually fucking up cars and buses in the first season, and by the end of the show, he was capable of ripping apart people possessed by Darkseid, racing to different places around the world within a few seconds, and even...
That I actually didn't like. I did not like how they treated his super speed like the Flash. This was the show that really started to take his super speed and make him be more like the Flash. They, did the fast forwarding running and stuff, so he'd take the sharp angles. Superman's speed is an extension of his strength. So it really doesn't make a ton of sense for me to be able to understand he works the same way the Flash does. But in Smallville, he worked the same way the Flash did. It was almost like time slowed down around him. I've never liked that. That is common and popular, but I've never liked that.
Casually stopping nuclear explosions. A few years down the line anyway. Seriously, how powerful is the Smallville version of Clark Kent? Well, let's take a look and find out. First, let's start with his strength. Now, like I said earlier, even though Clark did start off a little slow, mostly sticking to messing around with cars,
and he would get bruised and stuff too.
We did see him do
from bullets,
more impressive stuff over time. For example, in the first episode of season 9, titled Savior, a train Lois is on gets derailed, but thankfully for her, Clark is there to save the day. But how much weight did he catch? Well, considering the fact that the show was mostly filmed in Vancouver, I think it's safe to say that the on-screen train is supposed to be a Mark II Skytrain, which has cars that weigh around 49,163 pounds or 22,300 kilograms. Considering how we see that Clark managed to catch 3 of them, this means that he caught a combined weight of about 147,489 pounds or 66,900 kilograms.
Guys, you have to check out my video on the strongest live action Superman. It'll be at the end of this video on the end screen. And the reason why is because all this math, I did this math too for everything I did in the strongest live action Superman, and it takes a ton of research. It took a ton of time and effort, and it was I get what he's doing here. I get it, and I'm all here for it.
But we also need to factor in the weight of the people in all 3 of those cars too. Now, Mark II cars can hold a maximum of 130 people, so assuming that all 3 cars are full, and that each car has an even split between men and women, that means Clark also caught an additional 74,295 pounds, or about 33,699 kilograms. Adding this onto the weight of the cars we found earlier means that the total weight of the 3 train cars that Clark caught was about 221,784 pounds, or about 100,599 kilograms, or about 111 tons. Of course, that's only scratching the surface of how strong this Superman was. Remember back in the season 10 episode Lazarus when he casually caught the Daily Planet globe?
I wouldn't know how to calculate that. If he calculates this, I'm really going to pay attention.
Using Tom Welling as a ruler, we can see that the globe is about 3 Tom Wellings long, which,
Okay.
given the actor's height of 6'3" or about 1.9 meters, means the globe has a diameter of 5.7 meters. Assuming the globe is mostly hollow and is only made up of half a meter's worth of steel, this would give the globe a volume of 42.61 cubic meters.
See, he chose steel. I don't know that I would have chosen steel because it's at the top of a building. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not sure if it would be steel.
Multiplying that volume by the average 7,700 kilograms per cubic meter density of steel, we can see that lifting the globe means that Clark casually lifted about 723,330 pounds, or 328,097 kilograms, or about 362 tons.
He jumped with it. There's a difference between lifting, what's his name? Eddie Hall lifted, like a ton of weight. He didn't jump with it. He just pulled it off the ground. He jumped with it.
Of course, all that's next to nothing compared to the best strength feat in the show. In the series finale, we saw Clark actually fly up and push the oncoming planet Apocalypse away from Earth. Given this shot from part 1 of the series
I want to see what his number is on this, because I have a number on this one too in my video.
Finale, we can estimate that Apocalypse is the same size as Saturn, giving...
Okay, he went way bigger. Apocalypse can be between the moon and Saturn in size. So I kind of went lower just to show how powerful it was compared to other feats.
At a diameter of 72,367.4 miles, or 116,464 kilometers. I know it changes sizes literally every time it shows up on screen, but since the FX guys chose to make it big enough to mess up Saturn's rings on the way to Earth, I'm just gonna go with that. Anyways, now we can...
It's actually a pretty good point. I didn't even think of that.
Plug its radius into the formula for the volume of a sphere, which tells us that Apocalypse would have a volume of about 827 sextillion, 129 quintillion, 915 quadrillion, 150 trillion, 897 billion, 700 million cubic meters. And assuming the planet has the same 5,515.3 kilograms per cubic meter density as Earth, we can multiply our density and our volume to see that Smallville's Apocalypse has a mass of about 5 septillion, 28 sextillion, 600 quintillion, 481 quadrillion, 88 trillion, 339 billion tons.
Yeah, I didn't go with the Saturn size. I went with the moon size, but yeah, that math checks out. So I looked at that stuff, but I was like, I don't know if it was that big or not, but I like how he pointed out the rings thing. I probably should have just went with that size instead, because a bunch of people were like, well, what about Christopher Reeve moving the moon, which I had forgotten about. But, the moon is about the size of what I was using, but still, it would have been bigger than the moon, for sure.
Even if Clark kinda sorta moved the planet around, like even just pushing it maybe 1% out of the sun's orbit, that still means...
You mean digital Clark?
Clark could casually mess around with
one of the biggest disappointments in television history.
5 sextillion, 28 quintillion, 600 quadrillion, 481 trillion, 88 billion, 339 million tons. But considering how nobody in the far-flung future of 2018 seems to care about a new planet orbiting the sun, I think it's safe to say that Clark managed to at least push Apocalypse out of the solar system. So how powerful was his casual shove? Well, since he pushed it while in Earth orbit, we can estimate that Clark managed to get Apocalypse up to solar system escaping speeds of 42.1 kilometers a second. And now that we know that, we can plug everything into the formula for kinetic energy, giving us this. And doing the math tells us that Clark was outputting a force...
He's doing more math than I did, and I'm impressed.
...of about 966 quintillion, 240 quadrillion, 838 trillion, 95 billion, 626 million, 100,000 megatons. Considering how it only takes about 53 quadrillion megatons to destroy the Earth, that means Clark could destroy 18,230 Earths all at once.
Oh my gosh, that is a great comparison to show just how ridiculous his power... Guys, this is why I like powered down Superman. What can you do with that? What kind of story can you do with that? You know what I'm saying? Like, what? I've never been a big fan of the crisis, like everything's always the end of the freaking, like, universe existence. It's too big for me. I want to see, like, the Golden Age stuff where there was, like, an orphanage that was getting, abused or something, and somebody, he needs to investigate, and then when he comes in, he takes out the bad guys, no problem. You know what I'm saying? That's what I like. But some people like this stuff. They like the super duper crazy deity powered Superman. I'm not as big of a fan of that. And I am a true Superman fan. You see all my crap, right? Which you also could have if you go to my Amazon store and find all sorts of stuff that's just like you.
Little shove. And look at his face. He clearly wasn't even trying. Now let's take a look at his speed. On the surface, you'd think this version of Clark wasn't really all that fast, considering how he got smoked by a couple different characters on the show, but we did get to see some pretty crazy speed feats throughout all 10 seasons.
They were, just like he said, were the size of Apocalypse changed. what made him struggle changed all throughout the show, up and down. It wasn't just like a progressive, it keeps getting stronger. It was inconsistent.
Remember back in the season 2 episode Ryan, when we saw him run from Smallville to Hub City? There was a sign in the episode showing that Smallville is 425 miles, or about 683 kilometers, from Hub City, and I was able to count that it took Clark about 35 seconds to make the run. That basically means Clark was running at a speed of about 43,714 miles per hour, or about 70,351 kilometers an hour, or about Mach 56.
Mach 50 isn't a real thing.
Shut the fuck up, Season 2 Barry, you don't know shit. Of course, we did eventually see Clark get even faster than that.
You know, that's really interesting because when I think about him going that fast, I'm like, he stayed on the road. If you took a step and moved yourself that quickly, you would not stay on the road. You'd go from like one hill to the next, which is why, again, I say he doesn't move like the Flash, or he's not supposed to. The Flash could do that. The Flash is doing something different when he runs. Superman is just like, I'm strong. I push myself quickly, so I know a lot of y'all disagree with me, but that's how I like it.
Like a few seasons later. In the episode Void, we saw Clark casually run from Chloe's Metropolis University dorm in Kansas to the southern border of Honduras while looking for a disguised Brainiac. Now, the distance between Kansas and Honduras is about 2,661 miles, or about 4,282 kilometers, and counting from when Clark starts running to when he stops, I counted that the entire run took him about 9 seconds. Doing some simple math tells us that Clark was running at a nice and easy speed of 1,064,400 miles per hour, or about 1,712,985 kilometers an hour, or about Mach 1,387. Of course, that's next to nothing compared to the feat we got from the season 10 episode Kent, when we saw Clark running from Metropolis to the Fortress of Solitude while being chased by his Earth 2 counterpart Clark Luthor. Considering how the distance from Kansas to the Arctic is 2,957 miles, or about 4,758 kilometers, and assuming it only took Clark the 4 to 5 seconds between shots to make the run, that means he—
Why are we assuming 4 to 5 seconds? Where do we get that from? I was on board till that part.
He was running at a speed of about 2,129,040 miles per hour, or about 3,426,357 kilometers an hour, or about Mach 2,774.
Okay, this one I don't really agree with as much because I don't think we have a frame of reference on time for that. I don't think it could have took him a day. We don't know.
Back to the Flash. Remember how Barry managed to run about Mach 154 right after getting out of the Speed Force in season 4? Well, even after getting a massive speed boost, Barry still started off season 4 by running about 17 times slower than Smallville Superman. Now, I know a lot of people are going to argue that Clark was shown being able to run at light speed in the show, like that time in the season 8 episode Identity when he saved Lois and apparently outran a camera flash, but come on, that's not really light speed.
Yeah, camera flash is really light speed. It just depends on when the shutter closes. I mean, the shutter can close 5 times in a second, but that's not light speed shutter closing. Light speed shutter closing would be continual shutter snaps throughout, I'm a teacher.
First off, you can clearly see the camera's flash slowly getting brighter while there's already light on screen, meaning what Clark's really outrunning is the time it takes for the camera's flash gun to fully go off. Or in other words, Clark was really only just somewhat outpacing the camera's shutter speed. Plus, you'd think a guy running at light speed could avoid leaving a giant red smear all over Jimmy's picture, right? Now, that having been said though, we can guesstimate that Clark would be capable of moving at least at light speed by the end of the series, even without digging for feats in the season 11 comics. In the season 5 episode,
I think I've read that season 11 twice and can't remember anything from it. If you like the season 11 comic, put it in the comments, because I'm not saying it's bad, but I've read it a couple times and I don't remember anything. I don't remember what it was about or nothing.
episode Solitude, there's a moment when Lionel Luthor mentions that Kryptonians are able to move at about light speed.
It seems there is someone at Central Kansas University who has the astounding ability to run at virtually the speed of light.
Keep in mind, this is after he was affected by the Crystal of Water and gained all the knowledge of Krypton.
Your secret is safe with me, Kal-El.
So I'm pretty
I always loved the opera stuff they did with like Lex and his dad.
sure he knows what he's talking about. Even if you don't want to accept that though, we know that characters around the same level as a fully grown Superman, like Martian Manhunter and Supergirl, were capable of light speed movement in earlier episodes. So even though we never actually got to see Clark moving that fast, I think it's safe to say that he should be able to reach light speed, about 670,616,629 miles per hour, or 1,079,252,848.8 kilometers an hour, after finally accepting his destiny by the end of the series. Now, as far as Clark's durability goes, we actually don't really get a whole lot to calculate here as far as the higher level stuff goes. I mean, sure, we got some cool looking stuff since the first season, like that time he stuffed his arm in a wood chipper, had bullets bounce off of him, and getting smacked through some buildings without.
And again, in the early days, the bullets would give him bruises and stuff like that. So that's pretty cool that they did show that he was getting more powerful as time was going on. I really liked that kind of stuff.
Too much trouble, but come on.
Also, if you like this guy's video, check it out in the description where I've got a link straight to it.
He's Superman. We know he can do better than that, right? Of course, we did get to see him take hits from a bunch of different heavy hitters, like Bizarro, before and after his Kryptonite power-up, Doomsday, and General Zod. The thing is though, we don't actually get to see these guys really doing a whole lot when they actually get to do anything on screen besides just making faces at Clark, meaning just using their on-screen feats to calculate a number for Clark's durability would be kinda dumb. Oh yay, Zod Luthor managed to punch Clark through a rock. Cool. So, okay, how do we figure out how tough Clark is then? We could scale everybody's punches to the next biggest thing Clark managed to tank.
Yeah, see, when they have the godlike power and they smash through trees and rocks and use beams to hit each other, I'm like, but they've got godlike power that wouldn't even hurt. It's a waste of effort. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, it makes more sense to use your fist than it does to use a car, you know? I never understood that kind of stuff.
But instead of all that though, we could also just use a feat I talked about earlier to get a low ball on Clark's durability. Remember, Clark didn't just shove away a giant planet, he also stopped it from slamming into the Earth. Remember Newton's third law, that every action has an equal and opposite reaction? Basically, that means whatever force Apocalypse was bringing as it was about to slam into the Earth is a force that Clark was able to tank. So, okay, how much power was behind this fast-moving hunk of flaming space rock?
Now this I did not calculate, I just mentioned that it was a thing.
Well, we already estimated that Apocalypse weighs over 5 septillion tons, so all we need to know is how fast it was traveling to Earth. Starting from when it was over by Saturn, which said 797,560,000 miles, or about 1,283,548,400 kilometers away from Earth, and guesstimating that it took about 12 hours to make the trip, which I think sounds reasonable for a low-end estimate given how Lois and Clark's wedding earlier in the day got interrupted by the planet getting closer to Earth. That still means Apocalypse was traveling at a speed of about 66,463,333 miles per hour, or about 106,962,366 kilometers an hour. A planet of that size moving at that speed would have a kinetic energy behind it equal to 481 septillion, 258 sextillion, 266 quintillion, 593 quadrillion, 421 trillion, 900 billion megatons. For comparison, the Tsar, the most powerful nuclear weapon ever, could only output about 50 megatons. Even this lowballed calculation means that Clark could casually handle getting smacked by something equal to over 9 septillion of them at once. Holy shit. And keep in mind, all of this is still just scratching.
See, I don't like that powerful of a Superman. I actually like it when Superman is in a world of his own universe and there's no other heroes, but I like him to be the most powerful thing in existence, obviously, but I prefer him to be much less powered down. But again, you guys know, I'm a Golden Age guy, so that's kind of why that is. But even in the Golden Age, he was destroying asteroids and all kinds of crazy powerful feats. So it's a preference thing. I really liked Grant Morrison's New 52 run, where he powered him down a lot for the beginning, but then as he grew and, you know, he was extremely powerful by the end. He did a great job on that.
The surface of how powerful this Superman is. I mean, he has all of his powers from the comics, like the X-ray vision, the freeze breath, super healing, is immortal apparently, and the season 11 comics prove that he gets way faster and stronger after he officially becomes Superman, to the point where he can withstand universe-busting energy blasts and even headbutt a monitor.
I'm not sure if that makes much sense, but yes, that's exactly what happened.
Okay, seriously? That's starting to get a little ridiculous. I was kind of rooting for this guy to pop up in the Arrowverse crisis at some point, but what would the point be? He could just casually wipe the floor with anybody he wants.
I don't know how old this video is, but he did pop up in the Arrowverse crossover, and he was the weakest Superman ever when he did.
I mean, damn, who the fuck could ever challenge this guy in a fight? Guess that's why they call him Superman.
So what are you, man or Superman?
I haven't figured it out yet.
But anyways guys, that's my take on how powerful the Smallville Superman is. If you guys agreed with anything I said in this video, or if you have your own calculations you want to throw out there, then go ahead and let me know in the comments down below. Otherwise, I will see you all next time.
And if you want to see my version of this same, strongest live-action Superman dilemma, check out this video right here where I talk all about it, do my own math, and I compare all the live-action Superman, so that's pretty fun.